I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about our speakers. We have Katie Copeland. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She has a private practice called Wellness Talk Today. And Katie began her journey as an educator. She prepared incarcerated adults for reentry into the community. She also played a key role in revising the curriculum that is currently being used in parolee education programs throughout California. Also speaking with us today is Tina Chang, who has committed to the vision of having a strong family for every child and that every child be reunited with their family. She is also a licensed marriage and family therapist, and she is the intensive services director at Olive Crest. So today, Katie will be kicking off our meeting by sharing her insights on the importance of family reunification, speaking for approximately 30 minutes and followed by questions. Tina will speak for 20 minutes and then about the educational opportunities available to families in support of the reunification process over at Olive Crest. I will give both ladies a 5-minute little heads up in advance. And for now, I would like to go ahead and turn the meeting over to Katie. Let's welcome Katie Copeland.
All righty. Thank you so much, Justine, for that kind introduction. And I just want to start out by saying how honored I feel to be speaking with you all today. We have a really impressive and distinguished group of participants here, and I really am in awe of what all of you guys are doing in your communities to support the needs of individuals who are seeking resources to successfully reenter the community. So I hope that what I have to share today has some value for you. I am going to jump into a brief PowerPoint that I've assembled that might be helpful as a visual aid. So if you can bear with me for just a moment. Can you all see my screen right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so as Justine mentioned, my name is Katie. My private practice, it's here in Northern California, right outside of San Francisco, a town called Benicia. And half of what I do is psychotherapy services, individuals, families, couples. I serve individuals who are on Medi-Cal as well as Kaiser members, so a pretty diverse caseload. And I do often get to support individuals who are going through various issues related to family reunification. The other half of what I do is psychoeducation in the community. I contract with local schools to train teachers on trauma-informed practices. I also work with some different local nonprofit organizations, and I present on wellness topics. A lot of the practices that help us to stay, to restore wellness, but also to take care of ourselves in order to prevent some of the various experiences that occur when we're not taking care of ourselves. So that is what I'm doing now. A little bit about my background. Justine mentioned I started things as a teacher in Chula Vista in custody drug treatment program. That's in San Diego, where I'm from. And it started when I was given this gigantic white binder to take into a little basement of the Chula Vista City Jail, where individuals are being bused from Donovan State Prison into this small program in the jail to be prepared to re-enter the community. So it was a 60-day program. I was in the room with approximately 25 to 30 men that were preparing to be released into a halfway house. And the curriculum was really rich. Again, 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. We had just various, some videos, but a lot of activities and some lesson content. And I was a little bit skeptical when I started. I thought, what does this big white binder have to offer? But one of the joys was getting to repeatedly watch kind of the light bulbs go on for individuals in the program. It seemed that it was a really great opportunity while people are still in custody in a controlled setting to be able to get some really useful information to prepare them for the various stressors, challenges, and temptations they'd face upon release. So I did that until for a few years, and then AB 109 occurred. I did still stay with that program, but in a parolee setting, so it was outpatient. That's a 30-day program. And as Justine mentioned, I did get an opportunity to revise the curriculum for this statewide program. And I ultimately decided I wanted to do a little bit, kind of invest in myself a bit more. So I did become a clinician. And at that point was working, if you're familiar in California, we have something called the Conditional Release Program, where we provide outpatient treatment and court-ordered supervision for individuals falling under Penal Code 1026, which is committing a violent felony, but being found not guilty by reason of insanity. So it's technically considered a mental health program run as a partnership through the Department of State Hospitals. And the objective is really to help people restore to mental health and then help them transition in the community. So I was providing assessments, but also helping them with that transition, finding housing, offering case management, making sure that they have their benefits, but also giving them clinical support once they are out. And I share this background because it does inform a lot of what I have to share today. So I'm going to just jump right in. So this slide just reflects why I care about psychoeducation. I am kind of a nerdy teacher at heart, but what I really find valuable about psychoeducation is that it gives us access to a new way of life. The kind of formula that I see is that when we have insight, when we have this insight and this awareness about something that's not working or something we want, and we pair that with tools, strategies to help us do things a new way, that's what can give us behavioral change. And that gives us this access to a new way of life. And I see this being kind of the formula that I've observed really working for a lot of the individuals that I've had the privilege to work with, is that they developed their insight about what it was that they needed, patterns that they had, things they wanted to do differently, got the tools and support, and then were able to sustain a new way of living. And a lot of this has to do with our outlook, our perspective. I like this quote by Wayne Dyer: if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And if you imagine this picture, I don't know if any of you like to hike, but it's one thing when you're hiking up a mountain and it's tiring and you're hot and you're sweaty and you're like, why am I doing this? But then if you get up to a summit of any kind of hill and you have some expansive view, at that point, things just seem worth it. And sometimes psychoeducation, I think, is about giving people a wide angle lens so that they can see things with a different perspective and not feel like they are so stuck in their momentary experience, but giving people some sense of this is temporary and things can get better and there's support available. Even if you don't see it, even if there's something you haven't already tried, it's out there. So keep going. So what I'm going to offer right now is I was invited to share what do I think would be helpful with respect to family reunification. What are some of the things that I think would be useful to really enhance the success that individuals are experiencing, not just with reentering the community and finding some stability, but with reunifying successfully with family members. Oftentimes people are coming out of institutions feeling enormous shame, overwhelm. So these are some areas where I think a little bit of education can go a long way. And this first category is recognizing and understanding trauma. Many of us providers have now become trauma informed, but I don't believe all of that information has universally trickled to consumers. Some are fortunate to get this information, but I think it's really key. And so what would I offer as kind of an important thing? Starting is just a basic education, trauma 101, I would call it, which is helping people understand different types of trauma, how trauma impacts the brain and learning, and some of the long-term effects of trauma. And why is this important? I think many of the individuals that you all work with, they've been impacted by complex trauma, which is having been, exposed to a lot of different forms of trauma over a long period of time. And we know in looking at a lot of neuroimaging and a lot of studies have shown that this really impacts how our brains develop. So when we think about our brain, we have these precious brains and our amygdala, which is our alarm center. We know that early exposure to trauma actually enlarges that alarm center of the brain. And then other parts of the brain, like our hippocampus, which is involved with memory and learning, that actually is smaller for the brains of people who have early trauma exposure. So how does that affect somebody over the long term? Naturally, it leads to a hypersensitivity to chaos, to triggers, to perceptions of threats. And why is this important for understanding this information if you're reunifying with family? Because you might be you might be feeling like you're on eggshells at times. Others around you might have that feeling. But it's important to have that understanding of what's really going on in your brain so that you don't just feel like there's something wrong with you. The next area is then looking at the behavioral impacts. So if you have been exposed to trauma, how does this affect your behavior? So looking at the ways that we adapt to traumatic experiences. And this kind of falls into two different categories. We look at what I know many of us see as the maladaptive coping methods, which would include self-medication, substance use, self-harm, violence, crime. These are kind of the obvious and really common pathways when people are having exposure to trauma, and there's the perception that I live in a hostile world, so what do? I have to be buffered and I have to fight back. And some of those ways are very maladaptive and they lead to a lot of vicious cycles, but there's also post-traumatic growth. There is the opportunity for even people having had early exposure to trauma to develop resilience, insight, self-determination, to find their way into recovery settings, and to live very rich lives that are not in spite of, but because of all of the living and surviving and learning that has had to happen. And ultimately, managing long-term effects of trauma. And what does this mean? This involves mindfulness practices, learning how to avoid triggers, finding grounding practices that help us to calm the body and also the mind. So if you recognize that you have had, and most of the individuals who've been, coming out of institutions, there's probably tremendous trauma before ever entering, but definitely additional trauma once you are entering into the system. So how do you learn to then regulate and manage those long-term effects? And just so I can be kind of illustrating what are we really talking about, this is a slide that gives you some items that are really common. It's adapted by Janina Fisher's, her concept of the legacy of trauma is a workbook and some things that she's produced. So that's where this slide comes from. But this shows you just some very common responses that are typical long-term effects of trauma exposure. And I'm going to give you a moment just to look over these. And I want to ask you guys to consider, when you look at this slide, why might it be beneficial for someone who is re-entering the community and trying to reunify with family members? Why might it be valuable for them to know that these experiences are very common for someone who has had a traumatic exposure in their history? You can either say it in the chat or speak out loud, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on why this would be important.
Hi, I'm Fred Lapuzza here. I would say that all these things are going to affect their relationships. Mm-hmm. And that, of course, is going to be very important when they get out for their reentry, not only with family, spouses, but just almost any area of anything that they're going to be doing is going to have a huge impact on that.
Absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. Does anyone else have any other thoughts on why this information would be important for someone to have?
I think, Katie, I think that in knowing more about the person, you can better understand how to respond to them and what types of responses might be a little more effective for the different variety of potential traumas that they've had in their past. Mm-hmm. I know I can look at the chart and I can pick at least 3 at some level that I have myself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So thank you for the chart. I like it.
Thank you, Justine. I appreciate you weighing in there. There might be something in the chat. Jessica says it's important to understand they will experience barriers and there's help to assist them navigate these barriers. Absolutely. Absolutely, Jessica. It's really about helping people to anticipate these experiences. And I cannot tell you how many times I have seen people look at an illustration like this and say, oh my gosh, I just thought I was going crazy. And that thought, like I thought I was crazy, there's a lot of shame associated with that. So once you give somebody some information and you put it into context and you say, this is the natural way that your body has adapted to feeling like it's living in a hostile world. Once people know this is kind of natural or normal, quote unquote, it creates a little bit of ease, and it allows someone to have some sense of, okay, it's not like there's something wrong with me. This is just a kind of an after effect of what I've been through. Okay, so I'm going to move along to the next area that I think is of value. First, I like quotes, as you can probably tell. And this one I really love, John Kabat-Zinn, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. And this is kind of my segue into the next section of psychoeducation that I think is important, which is emotional regulation. And emotional regulation, what we know is that one of the biggest long-term effects of trauma exposure is that people become dysregulated. We'll talk more about that in a second. But what we know is that it's important if somebody is having a difficult time regulating their emotions, that they develop some awareness and also have some tools to help them with that. What does this look like? Emotional self-awareness. First of all, normalizing the range of emotions, allowing people to know it's okay to have feelings. Sometimes people are afraid of their feelings because their feelings have led them back to the needle or back to some problematic vice. But it's important that people realize it's okay to have emotions, but you just have to learn how to cope with them. So exploring different emotional experiences that are associated with different conditions, settings, people. Also completing the stress cycle. We know in a lot of the research done around even burnout that when we have stress, one of the things that's important is allowing the stress cycle to be completed. So releasing that stress energy. And when we don't release the stress energy, we tend to contain it. And that's what leads to that experience of chronic stress or toxic stress. So teaching people how to express their emotional energy is really important. Identifying personal patterns. So what is it that happens when you're angry? You know, what does that usually lead to? How do you respond? Are you someone that does like the silent treatment, or do you make kind of passive aggressive comments, or do you kind of hold things in and try to act like nothing's bothering you? And then do you just blow up? It's important that people are able to know what is their pattern, what are the triggers, what is it that leads to you feeling certain ways, and then knowing what are those warning signs. How do you know when you're reaching your emotional threshold, and how do you know when it's time to start using your coping tools? And then getting to those tools, what are the tools? How do we cope with emotions? I think it's really important, and a lot of what I've done in my work is giving people very quick and practical techniques to help calm the body, to de-escalate those emotions. Teaching anger management to coming out of institutions, it's important that they have other ways of dealing with that stress energy so that it doesn't lead to any type of violence or any type of reaction that's going to lead to violence. So practicing reframing thoughts, supporting more of a rational or reasonable response, gaining strategies to stay in the zone of tolerance. And some of you, if you're not familiar with the zone of tolerance, I have yet another visual for you. This is what kind of shows us when we talk about getting emotionally regulated. What we're really talking about is staying in our window of tolerance. As you can see by this chart, the window of tolerance in the center, that represents our optimal state of arousal. When we have just enough energy, just enough juice to function well and to focus, but not so much that we're anxious or that we get into what we call hyperarousal, where we are panicked or we are getting into a rage or where we're manic. And then beneath the window of tolerance, we get to parasympathetic hypoarousal, which is where we have kind of that lesser energy associated with depression, associated with the kind of that if there's fight, flight, this would be the freeze response of just shutting down, disconnecting, feeling exhausted or dead inside. And it's quite normal it's typical, I shouldn't use the word normal, but it's typical for people to fluctuate along this chart. But the idea is that if you dip above your window of tolerance or below, that you don't get stuck there. And what happens, what's problematic is when people tend to frequently get outside of their window of tolerance to where they're not functioning, they're not able to think clearly and rationally, and then they stay there. Somebody with a traumatic history is prone to getting stuck either in hyperarousal or in hypoarousal, sometimes alternating between the two. So getting back to the goal of family reunification, if you have someone coming out of an institution, they are reunifying with family, why would it be important for them to learn some tools around regulating their emotions in that process? Why do you think that's important? You can even think about people that you work with, individuals that use your services in your organization.
So Katie, I do have some input. I'm gonna make this a little bigger. I didn't know about the window of tolerance or the zone of tolerance. And when I first saw this slide, I could see where just polite society, you know, we have a lot of exhaustion and depression. Some of us are, at least for myself, tend to be a little more disconnected and hypervigilant. And so to fluctuate so greatly to extremes where you're, you know, at times stuck on and at times you just can't, you know, peel yourself off the couch. I had no knowledge of this previous, and it makes a lot of sense in a lot of areas, because, you know, we all have days like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could totally relate to this slide. So thank you for sharing it. I think it is important to know where people come from and where they're at.
Yeah.
And meet them where they stand.
Thank you, Justine. Absolutely. And I can share a brief story of one individual that I worked with not so long ago, who was struggling with some patterns of becoming really overwhelmed and temperamental around her small children. And she had tremendous shame over it because she felt like she was so quick to kind of flash on them, to just lose her temper with them. And why that was particularly troublesome to her is that she had a father who would often do that with her. And she never wanted to be like her father. She never wanted to be this angry, screaming, temperamental kind of person, but she noticed this tendency coming up in her. And so we did some work around this, understanding what is it that happens to you, that what are the triggers that cause you to get out of your window of tolerance. And, you know, what we learned is that part of her stress response is that when she saw people getting out of control, it was triggering for her. And in the same way that her dad becoming temperamental would trigger her, seeing her young children fighting, that would stress her out. And if you're a parent, you probably relate to that. Seeing your kids fighting is stressful. And when she would get stressed out, that would trigger in her that hyperarousal response. What did that look like? That looks very similar to what it looked like with her father. And that's how these multi-generational cycles often appear. So giving people some insight, helping people to recognize their own patterns and even some generational patterns, it can be very powerful. And again, helping them to feel like there's nothing wrong with you. You're not crazy, but there are patterns there for a reason. And here are some tools that you can use to get beyond that. And I often use what I call Instacom strategies. These are really quick things, by the way. Any of you guys can use these or pass them on. If somebody is feeling like they're getting into that state of hyperarousal, what can you do very quickly to kind of reset yourself? The 5-second rule. There's been a book written about this. It's kind of popular, but basically you count backwards from 5, and then you just take a quick action. So imagine if you decide you're going to water the plant, you're going to count backwards from 5 and then water the plant. It's just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get up and water the plant. What is the value of this? Counting backwards. Kicks on. Oh, I hear a little feedback. Uh-oh, is somebody on? When you count backwards, it kicks on the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that controls our ability to reason and think rationally. So that actually gets us out of that amygdala, which is the more emotionally kind of like the alarm center, the part that gets us feeling inundated with emotional neurotransmitters. So just counting backwards from 5 and then getting up and really quickly taking an action is going to be helpful if someone feels like they're about to lose it. Okay, what's another quick tool? This is one I really love, which is the yawn. Has anyone ever had an experience where you see somebody yawn and then you start to yawn? Anybody ever had that happen? Well, why is that? It's actually, that's a biological thing in nature. When we see other people yawn, it triggers us to yawn. And it's actually our way of sending signals to other people that you can calm down. Our autonomic nervous system, which is what controls fight flight response. When we yawn, whether it's a real yawn or a fake yawn, it signals the body to calm down. So if you ever want to kick on what we call the parasympathetic nervous system, that calming part of your body, go ahead and yawn. And it can be, let's try it all right now. Everybody yawn. It won't hurt my feelings. Everybody yawn right now. It can be a fake yawn. I want you to notice, does that have a calming effect on you? I often use this at home with my 4-year-old. The other day, she threw a tennis shoe at my head because I wouldn't give her a lollipop. And I just yawned. I looked at her and I yawned. And it was my way of saying, you're not getting to me, little girl, but it also calmed me down. So this is another technique that can be used to immediately calm the body. A final technique is a face self-massage. This is something that you can do anytime, anywhere. Try massaging your face. If you just want to take your fingers, you can move them along your temples. You can move them above your eyebrows, along your forehead. You can kind of stretch out the skin around your earlobe, open the jaw. A lot of people get pressure along their jawline, especially if you grind your teeth. So just massaging your face actually helps to release some neurotransmitters that make you feel a little bit better. And it brings some blood flow back to that frontal lobe. So this is another really quick thing. Some people do this automatically when they're stressed out. If you ever see somebody who looks stressed and they immediately put their hand on their forehead, that's a natural instinct to bring blood flow back to your brain. So those are 3 quick strategies you could use if you're wanting to get back into a window of tolerance. Little quote, the way we talk to our children becomes their inner voice. This final section of psychoeducation really has to do with how do we build relationships when we are trying to assist people with family reunification. What are the things that need to occur for that person to have some success? So it starts with giving people some education around dysfunctional relationships. One time I was in the jail and I was talking about healthy relationships, healthy communication. And a gentleman raised his hand and he said, Katie, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know if I've ever seen a healthy relationship before. I don't know what it looks like. And I really appreciated his candor because many of us, we haven't had a lot of strong models when it comes to healthy communication, healthy relationships. We don't know what that looks like. So giving some basic education around it, looking at things like the Cartman drama triangle, family systems theory, different styles of communication. There's a lot of great educational tools and modules that have been adapted to illustrate the difference between what is dysfunctional and what is functional. And it's important that people can distinguish between the two.
Katie, we have about 5 minutes.
Oh, great. Looking at boundaries is something that's also important, especially for people to build independence, have a sense of personal control, managing codependent impulses, creating agency, feeling empowerment, and then also building secure attachment. I could get into a long talk about attachment theory and why this is so vital, but many people who find themselves in the position of being in and out of institutions or being in a position to be removed from family and then reunifying, there has been broken attachment on multiple ends. So learning how to rebuild trust and rebuild secure attachment, that can be crucial. And also safety planning. If I do start to feel overwhelmed, if I do feel like I need help, I need support, what are my resources? A lot of organizations use RAP planning to do this type of safety planning, but preparing for high stress, high risk situations. It's important for people to know they have recourse, that just because they get to their boiling point, it doesn't mean they have to veer off in the direction they have in the past, that they have other options, other supports. This is just a little grid on attachment styles. And a final slide, just why, again, is this so important? What's the value of psychoeducation? This is about removing a lot of the shame and stigma that can come for people who've gone through addiction, who have been incarcerated, creating some context for lived experience, recognizing things in a way where it doesn't feel so unique to you, but you realize other people go through this too, you're not alone. Building some coping skills, and this helps with relapse prevention, not just relapsing into potential substance use, but relapsing into maladaptive behaviors, maybe abusive behaviors that can easily ensue if people aren't being mindful of how they're feeling, and helping people to feel prepared. That increases a person's confidence to put themselves back in new situations or stressful situations. And also we know that when people are thinking, all of you guys right now, when you're listening to me talk and you're looking at these different diagrams, it's stimulating the prefrontal cortex. So if you came into this call feeling a little bit stressed out or emotional, just listening to what I'm talking about here today is probably shifted some of the centers of the brain that are actually online and working. And that's the value of education, is it can take us out of our emotional brain and put us in our thinking brain. That can be very relieving to someone who frequently suffers from emotional overwhelm. And so that is basically what I had to share. And I know I just have a couple minutes left, but I wanted to close today by offering just a short story that is why this information is so important to me. Several years ago, it was more than 15 years ago, I had a wonderful friend. She was an amazing person, smart, funny, beautiful, and we had so much fun together. We both lived, we were neighbors, and we both lived alone, but we would always be doing fun things together, going to get coffee, going on walks around the neighborhood, going to street fairs. She introduced me to potato tacos, which I soon realized were not gross, but were wonderful, and I still eat them today. And I loved this friend dearly, and I was aware that she had a history of having addiction, but I never knew her to be actively using. And then at one point I went on a vacation. I got to go abroad for a couple weeks, and I was so excited when I came back home to tell her all about my trip. And I called her a few times and it went to voicemail. I went to visit her. The door didn't get answered. And then one time I saw her in a parking lot, and I think she saw me, but she looked away and she kept walking. And I thought, what is going on? This is my friend. Like, what's going on? And I, late one night, got a voicemail from her in tears saying, Katie, I'm so sorry, but I've relapsed. And at that point, I just felt like the wind had gone out of my sails. I felt enormously sad. At that time, I was teaching a relapse prevention program in the jails. And I thought, what kind of friend am I, teaching relapse prevention? And I have this close friend, and I didn't see any signs. I couldn't help her. I couldn't prevent what was happening. And from that point on, things got a lot worse for her. And I kept trying to rescue, as a lot of loved ones do when they see somebody struggling. But what I did at one point was I felt very desperate one night, and I called 211. This was a number that I always gave out, and I thought, I need to call this number myself. And when I called, they connected me to a hotline. And I told the person that answered the phone, I said, somebody that I love dearly is drowning in an addiction, and there is nothing I can do. I'm begging, I'm negotiating, I'm trying to reason with her, but I'm becoming very controlling. And I feel like I'm this naggy parent, and she's the rebellious teenager. And this isn't our friendship. I hate how this feels. And the person on the other end of the phone said, when you talk to her, you can't talk to the addict. Your friend, your beautiful friend, is in there. She's in there somewhere, and she is listening, and she may not be able to respond to you. And she may not be able or ready to come out, but she's there. And if you want to reach her, you just have to speak to her and just relate to your friend, talk to your friend, speak from the heart, but speak to your friend. Don't speak to the addict. And I got off of that call, and it made me feel so much better to know that somewhere in there, my friend still existed, and she was in there. And so the interactions I had with her, they were really helpful, because at least I wasn't looking at her as the addict. I was looking at my friend, and I was speaking to that friend that I loved. And sadly, that friend ended up getting farther into her kind of spiral, ended up going to jail, and I would collect calls. Sometimes I answered, sometimes I didn't. And then the call stopped coming, and soon I just stopped hearing from her. And I definitely feared the worst. And years went by, and I moved. I came to Northern California. I never heard from her again. And I had this horrible sense that she had possibly lost her life in this terrible, tragic path that she was on. And I always felt like there was this part of me that was missing, like I had a severed limb. I had no closure. I didn't get to say goodbye. And I ached about that. And then, I've had to live with that. And it was kind of part of my motivation. Every time I was working with someone in recovery, it gave me some extra passion to like care about this work, because you don't want to lose someone else to this experience. And then last November, I get a call out of the blue, and it's my friend, and she sounds amazing. And she says, Katie, I'm good. I haven't really reached out because I didn't know if you'd even want to hear from me, but I've actually been clean now for several years, and I'm doing great. And I was overwhelmed, you guys. I was overcome with joy. It was one of the happiest moments. And I was elated to hear her voice, and I could tell how good she was doing. And so we continue to stay in touch. And not long after that call, she reached out again, and she said, Katie, I know the work that you've been doing over the years, and I would really like to invite you to come talk to a group of providers. I am a program coordinator for this awesome organization called H.I.R.E. And I know that the work you do is aimed at helping people who've gone through the kind of thing I've gone through. And I just want you to share some of the things that you think are important. And with her permission, because I have gotten her permission, I told my friend, Justine Ross, I would love to do anything that's going to help you, because you have helped me so much. And I thank you now, Justine Ross. You have been such an enormous source of inspiration to me to continue doing this important work. But I also want to thank everyone else on this call. Some of you guys, you're like the 211 operators. You're like the people that answer the hotline calls. You are the ones that are there for people in their hour of need. And Justine is this living example on our screen right now that those people that are struggling, they're still in there. Even when they're struggling, they're always there, and they're always fighting, and they just need our support. And I just want to thank you all for what you do to offer that support in the communities that you serve. And I know I've gone on for quite a bit, Justine, but I am done with what I had to share. And I just thank you so much for letting me talk today and inviting me here.
Katie, thank you so much. Very, very much appreciate all of your insights and information. And yeah, that girl in that story was me. It's been a long road, but here we are. And Katie's always been amazing. She absolutely vibrates. Get to know her. She's a phenomenal woman. I just want to thank you again for sharing all of your insights and your passion with us today, Katie. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so happy to. Thank you, Justine.
Thank you. And I would like to next introduce and welcome Tina Chang. She is the Intensive Services Director at Olive Crest. And Tina, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting us to participate, and thank you for your bravery, Justine, and letting Katie share your story in front of all of us. I was like, where's this girl going? And then you surprised us like that. Beautiful. So a little bit about who we are. Olive Crest is a child and family serving organization, and we have locations in, we started in Orange County. We have offices in Los Angeles, Riverside, all the way out to the desert in Coachella. in that region: San Diego, Santa Barbara, Las Vegas, and the Pacific Northwest. We are often known as a foster family agency, and if you are in the process of trying to reunify, you might think that foster family agencies are your enemy, and we really aren't. We are always looking for ways for the children we're caring for, even in our foster family agency, to return to their families. So Olive Crest has a monitored and supervised visitation program, where we're really teaching parenting in vivo, so that parents who are actively trying to reunify with their children have an opportunity to practice the skills they need. We have outpatient mental health services for children who are impacted by anything going on in life. This is for any Medi-Cal beneficiary. And you know, the disappearance of a parent and then the reappearance of a parent is very unsettling for a child. So while Katie was really sharing about what needs to be done on the parent side of things, the healing and understanding that they need, we're really working from the child's direction and how they can heal and reconnect with their biological parent. One of the things that we find is very often ordered by the court is parenting education. So that's what we're primarily here to share about today. Parents are required very often to go through a parenting education course. And one of the things we know is anybody can go through, attend, get a certificate, but not everybody who attends the class actually learns to be a better parent. It's really about that, showing up with that motivation and that true heart to want to reunify with your child. All of our parenting education courses come with the additional support of individual interventions. So any parent or caregiver who's enrolled in a parent education course can reach out to the parenting educator and say, I'm just not figuring out how to apply this in my own home. I don't know how to do this with my child who's maybe still in a foster home or who's maybe with grandma and I only get visits. And so we can individually coach them through using some of the new parenting skills that they're acquiring in parenting education. I want to show a little video because it's so much more powerful than me just talking. So let me share my screen really quick.
Yes, I recommend it to everyone. Even if you're not a parent, honestly, even if you're not a parent, this class was like an eye opener. I just learned a lot of like new tools that I never knew before.
Y al tomar esas clases, al escuchar que alguien está ahí atrás de la pantalla, escuchándote, yo creo que con ese simple hecho de sentirte escuchada, y quizás estás pasando por un momento difícil, el encierro con nuestros hijos, ¿qué hacemos? Y al tener a la maestra enfrente y decirte, existe este modo de trabajar con nuestros niños, tú te sientes, wow, necesito estar aquí tomando estas clases.
It's a program to help parents to building a safe place for our children's. And I say our children's because it's our future. Because when we thinking about our program is impacting our community, I always cry. I always cry because you listen to stories about, I never heard that. People need that program in our communities.
You know, we really have a heart to help families succeed, not just handing a parent a pamphlet and say, here, go read this. It's really sitting down with the parent.
Well, nobody teaches you to do this. Why would I need to go to a class? Nobody taught me, nobody taught my parents. You just go with it, right? And you run. As a society, we're really seeing, right? What are those things that we can be intentional about? What are those things that we can transform in our family? And not just our family, our immediate family, but as a culture, as a society, and as a bigger picture.
We understand that parenting is a really difficult job. If anything, it might be the most difficult job that there is.
And we hope that through our parenting classes, you feel supported to keep navigating this job. We really want to make sure that we let everybody know it's not even just for parents, even though we're parenting education. It's really anybody who has interactions with children.
Parenting education is a program that is available at no cost to any parent or anyone who's active in the life of a child here in Orange County. We offer 6 to 7 class sessions where anybody can come and learn about how to improve their parenting skills. And then we also offer individual sessions where if there's a parent who has a particular need or a particular issue coming up at home, we can individually work with that person to help them develop those skills.
We have a diversity of parent educators who speak Spanish, Vietnamese, Korean, Arabic, and Farsi. I'm not here to just read to you from this book and tell you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. Absolutely not. I'm here more as just a facilitator, to facilitate a conversation, to facilitate a community, a sense of community where we're all learning together. So everybody has something to bring to the table. Everybody has knowledge to share, and it's a community that we're building where we are all sharing and learning together as parents.
Just like the families we serve, it takes a village, right, to raise our kids. And so with a team this large, we are able to serve all throughout Orange County.
What we're really talking about here is behavioral health. So we're helping families to identify behaviors before they get to a point where they're really hurting and harming the family, and helping families to solve those problems before they become a major issue in the family. We find that this also helps with children's self-esteem. It helps with healthy communication within the home, and it really helps the family to function in a positive way together.
So what does this mean? Is it a magic formula that parents take this class and they'll have perfect kids? No, it means that evidence shows that with working through these methods and these techniques, it's more likely that you'll be able to build that strong relationship with kids.
Okay, so that is sort of a really pretty view of what we do here with our parenting education program. We're offering classes in person and via Zoom, because we know that the pandemic taught us a lot. It taught us that parents really struggle if they have to stay home with their kids 24/7, and kids really struggle when they don't have the ability to interact with their peers. But we also learned some of the positive things, that we can really reach a large number of participants in our community by offering classes in both the virtual and in-person formats. And as I said in the video, we're offering classes in 6 languages because we really want to make sure that language isn't a barrier. All of our parent educators are bilingual of that culture. So they can not only speak in the language that the family is asking, but really can address some of the cultural nuances in implementing a healthy parenting relationship. And again, why this is so important, we really find, and Katie alluded to it a little bit, that attachment is such an important part of our mental well-being. And if children don't have a safe and secure attachment with their biological parent, they're going to have a higher likelihood that they'll have mental health issues, behavioral issues, and now we know even physical issues as a result of not really having that healthy relationship. So anything we can do to support parents to really have a healthy relationship with their child is benefiting our entire community. One of the other things that a lot of our parent participants say after having completed a parenting education course is knowing that they weren't the only one, that other parents were struggling with the same things that they were struggling with was really, really important to them. That's another reason our classes, we offer a 0 to 5 curriculum, so focus specifically on parents of children 0 to 5. We offer school aged and then a teen curriculum, so parents of teenagers. A lot of parents may feel like, oh, I had it down and then this teenager showed up and now I know nothing. And so we really want to make sure there's a space for parents to discuss the specific issues that they're having in their family, or really learn what the next steps are. They may have felt really qualified to parent a 0 to 5-year-old and know that they're really out of their water when it comes to parenting a teenager. So we do offer all of those options. And trying to think if there's anything else. We've been doing this for years and it's free. And we just want to make sure people know some of the locations we offer this course. We do offer this course in the jail. So we're offering it directly to incarcerated parents. We offer it in many of the family resource centers in Orange County, and also through a lot of schools and through churches in the community. So there's always a location. We send out a calendar every month of all the courses available. And we're just hoping to reach as many parents as possible and make sure that they know that they're not alone in learning how to do this. It's not as easy as people would think. So any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Other than that, that's who we are here at Olive Crest.
Tina, thank you so much for sharing today all of the educational resources. It sounds phenomenal, and I'm super excited to hopefully have an upcoming little site tour. I believe you guys are in Fountain Valley. Is that correct?
Our main office is in Santa Ana, but we provide classes we have a non-public school in Garden Grove and Orange. We provide classes in the family resource centers. Oak Grove Family Resource is in Huntington Beach there. Omar can help me remember any other. Tustin Family Resource Center, Santa Ana School Districts, schools. So we're pretty much everywhere we need to be as far as parenting education goes. And we're always open to having classes hosted at any site. If any of you have you feel like you have a need. I know we work with some of the housing, the shelters, women's shelters. We provide courses in women's shelters. We provide courses in at some of the housing complexes. So any place, if you would like a course hosted, we are happy to send a parenting educator. We also provide childcare during our courses. So if it's an in-person course, the participants are able to bring their children, and we provide free childcare during that time as well.
That's wonderful. Wonderful information. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
At this time, and thank you for both ladies. Thank you for sharing your insights and your knowledge and your time with us today. At this time, I would like to go ahead and open the meeting to see if there are any questions that could be answered or comments. Well, I was looking at some background on Olive Crest, and it looks like you have a milestone anniversary coming. I think it's 50 years next year.
Yes,
50 years of service
in 2023. We started in 1973. Our founders opened a group home and here in Orange County, and just took youth into their home, and didn't realize that would snowball into the organization that we are today, with nearly 1,000 employees serving everything. We really started with out-of-home care and group homes and foster. And then the longer we did that, the more we realized we needed to do everything we could to keep kids in their homes and get kids back to their homes. So we have very large wraparound contracts in LA, Orange County, and Riverside County. And those are our family preservation programs. We're really trying to keep people safe and happy in with their biological family whenever possible. And we really encourage really parents to advocate for themselves and for their children. Don't accept removal, say you want your kids and then keep working at that until you get them back. And that's why we added a visitation, anything we can to support parents to navigate that very, very difficult journey to reunification. No one's going to pretend that that's going to be an easy journey to convince us, the social services court, the family court or the dependency court, that you deserve to have your children back. But we believe you do. We believe that children do best with their families. And we have as many services as we can think of to help make that possible.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. this is total just curiosity. The name Olive Crest. Do you know where that comes from?
I really do. So in the front yard of the very first group home, there happened to be an olive tree growing, and the founder, Dr. Velour, and his wife Lois, said they thought of a family crest. So they wanted these kids who were coming to their group home to feel like this was their family. So they created a family crest that had the olive tree in it. And that's where the name got started. We originally, I think, had the name Olive Crest Treatment Centers, but after talking to the youth and the families we served, no one wanted to be associated with the fact that they were in treatment. And so none of our branding really sounds anything other than like, this is our family crest. And you're not disordered to be here with us. You're just part of our family. And that's really the way, we treat our staff, and we treat our all the participants in our programs, that they're a part of our family. And Olive Crest is our family crest.
That's phenomenal. Oh, let's see. And I would like to open for any announcements. If anyone has any events or meetings that are upcoming that you would like to announce to the group, now would be a great time to do that.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, can you see me?
I can. Hi, Pepper.
Hi, how are you?
Great, great. Glad you could join us. I know you were driving earlier.
Yes, but I was listening very intently. The reason that I'm here is because I have a Career Edge program, which is soft skills, a series of workshops that we are offering. We have offered them to college students who are going into the job market, and also to high school seniors who were dual enrollment in college and therefore able to work in that capacity. So now we are going to open up a program, same exact program, but for people who are re-entering the job market. And this would seem to be right in line with what you would need for those if they're ready to get back into the job market. And we'd like to offer that program. So if anyone would like to contact me and talk about that, I am in Irvine, and we service an area, because we're the Greater Irvine Chamber, we service an area 5 miles beyond the city radius outline. So we service Santa Ana, we service Orange, we service Anaheim, we service Costa Mesa. If you're in any of those areas, or even a little farther north, please get in contact with me. You can find me at the Greater Irvine Chamber. That's www.irvinechamber.com. And prussell@irvinechamber.com is my email. And I'm looking forward to working with you. I very much am passionate about getting our people back into the workforce. And yes, I'd like to work with you. So please do contact me.
That's great, Pepper. Soft skills are often overlooked. And I remember the first time I saw somebody asked me a question about my soft skills, and being a reentry member myself, I struggled with that. What are my soft skills? And so I think that that's key. It's very helpful for the reentry population. And so thank you for that. Would you be so kind to put your information in the chat?
Thank you for having me.
I will save the chat, and then that way everyone can see it and have that opportunity to collaborate with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So I would like to make a couple of announcements. We do have some upcoming meetings. H.I.R.E is hosting, it's a virtual paint night. It's led by Starry Night Studios. It will be held on August 26th from 6:30 to 9 p.m. I just posted the flyer in the chat. So it's time to channel your inner Picasso. Please sign up early. You can sign up for a lesson with supplies provided, or you can get your own supplies and just attend the Zoom meeting. Also, we have an upcoming advocacy subcommittee meeting on September 20th that will be from 2:30 in the afternoon to 4. And like this event will also be on Zoom. I would like to thank everyone who joined us today and for the participation. And if we could say thank you once again to both Katie and Tina for all of the insight and passion that you have brought to our industry. Your time is greatly appreciated.